Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you, the good and wonderful people of the tube. It's getting very, very close to Christmas. Are we all excited? I know I am. Haha. Hello, and welcome to another episode of How to Play with John Frusciante, getting out of the Christmas way for just a moment. Lesson 3 on theory. Today I want to talk about moving the shapes that I've taught you in the last videos and D minor into different keys. I want to talk about the Californication Slane Castle intro in A minor, and I want to explain about that. I want to recap the whole relative major and minor thing, and I want to talk about a little bit about John's pick attack and just general kind of note choices. So that's what today's going to be. So first thing, I want to talk about moving the shapes you know in D minor, you know, the F major pentatonic, you know, the other shapes of your pentatonic scale, moving them into different keys. So I want to talk about that quickly, and then we'll move on from there. So let's get on with that. Okie dokie doo. I don't know what that was. That was weird. Anyway, before I get into talking about moving those, you know, those pentatonic shapes into different keys, I want to talk about something which I forgot to mention in the last video, and it's kind of important. It's learning the notes on your top low E string, and in my opinion, these are the notes you'll only ever need to know on the guitar. You don't need to learn your A, D, G, and B, and obviously, you know, if you learn your low E, you know your high E. So, your A, D, and G and B, you know, you don't need to know the notes on them, you just need to kind of know those shapes and, you know, where the notes fall on them. But for figuring out music and figuring out the key of a song, it's really important to know the notes on your low E string. And it also helps to train your ear to hear what key a song's in. So, for instance, like, you know, obviously, you know, your open E is E, so your first fret's F, then F sharp, G, G sharp, 5th fret is A, then B flat, B on the 7th fret, C on the 8th, C sharp on the 9th, D on the 10th, E flat on the 11th, and then back to E again on the 12th. And again, once you get to the 12th fret, everything's a mirror image from that point on, so you just start again F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, so on and so forth. So, and with that, what you can do is learn to train your ear to hear and to figure out what key a song's in. Say, for instance, like, you know, you stick a song on, like, you know, say you want to learn Easily, which is in A minor. Say you don't know that. You put that on and you hear that first chord. You know, you hear that. Yeah, right, okay, so, that was terrible. But, you know what I mean? And you can kind of, like, you know, you kind of walk it up until it sounds right, and you go, oh, there it is, that sounds right, you know, and then all of a sudden, you know, what's that note? That's an A, and then, you know, you can distinguish then if it's a major or a minor, you know, minor being sad, obviously major being happy, and then you can kind of go from there, and then you know what key the song's in, you know, and then you can kind of like start to figure out, you know, chord progressions and stuff from that point on, just by using the root notes on your low E and knowing the notes. So, and I want to talk about that more in the next lesson. I'll expand a bit more on that when I talk a bit more about some other things as well. So, let's get on to talking about moving these pentatonic shapes into different keys. Okie dokie, so, hopefully by now you kind of like, you know, you're starting to get a really good understanding of those 5 positions I showed you in the last in the previous videos, and you're starting to get like a, you know, a real good understanding of you know, where how to run them, where the, you know, where the notes lie that you can use, you know, and just getting an idea of those shapes, and they're starting to lock into your brain. So once you have those 5 shapes and those 5 positions under your fingers, and you can literally do them as, you know, if I said, you know, position 3, you can just like, ah, there you go. Once you have them under your fingers, that's it. You are literally 80%, you know, there learning the entire guitar neck in any key. Well, maybe 80% is a bit ambitious, probably more like, you know, 65, 70. But once you've learned those shapes, that is, you know, a lot of a battle won, so to say. And basically all you're doing from that point on is you're just moving the shapes into different places, so it's different notes that correspond to the key you're in. I hope that makes sense. Like, for instance, let me show you an example. Like, I'm gonna stick to A minor because I want to talk about the Sandcastle Californication intro later on. But say, for instance, like, so your D minor pentatonic with the added notes. So you've got those. You've got that shape. You know that the bottom half is an F major. You've got your weird flat 5 and your chromatic bit. The whole thing in itself is a D minor pentatonic. So now, for instance, if you know the intro to Californication is A minor, you don't have to learn a whole new shape to go and play an A minor. You just need to find your A note, again coming back to that thing of knowing your top strings notes. So you find your A note, which is 5th fret on the low E, so that's there, and then you just run that exact same shape. So there you go. That's it. Now you're playing in A minor instead of D minor. You've transposed that D minor pentatonic to A minor. And the same thing goes, say for instance, if you're playing a song that's in like E minor, for instance. You can move it, find your E note, well there's an open, or there's the 12th fret, and you've transposed it to E minor. So now you'll know your minor pentatonic, which is again 5th position of a pentatonic scale. You know that position in A and E. So from that point on, you can then figure out, okay, what's the next shape after A minor? And what is relative major to A minor? Let me hear you. Somebody got it? Yes, it is C major. Well done to you. That's, like I say, the whole relative major and minor thing. All you do is you get your root note, and if it's a minor, you count up. If it's a major, you count down. So if you're A minor, count 3 frets, 1, 2, 3, and you get C major. And you can always test it, like I say, with that, that 50s ballad thing. If you go to start on C, it gives you that kind of sound. If it's wrong, it'll sound wrong. And if you go the other way. So it'll give you that kind of giveaway sound. So if you then know your next position, your first position, your major position, that's just then C major. Sorry, wrong note. So then you can then go, right, okay, so now I know the C major position, which is obviously starting at the C note, which is the 8th fret. So then you know your first position and your 5th position. So you know your A minor and your C major, and then you can start to build up a map of the neck in A minor. So then you can go, okay, so what's after C major? What's after that shape? What's the next shape? And it's obviously it's that one. No, I got some wrong notes in there, but I'm rushing to try and make it to get through it. But so that's your next shape, and then up from there, and then up from there, and then you start to build up a map of the neck in A minor, which is again another thing to learn. And it's so important to take your time, really hammer it into your head. Just run these shapes over and over again until you can literally close your eyes and just run them in your sleep, so to say. So that's that. That's basically the thing. You've learnt the shapes, you just need to move them into a different key now. You just need to transpose them, basically. You know them in D minor, so now try and learn the shapes in A minor by just moving the shapes. So your D minor shape goes to A minor here. I really, really hope that makes sense. It's quite difficult to explain, but I hope this makes sense. It's just a case of sitting with your guitar and going, well, I'm learning. Let's think. I'm learning. I can't think of a song. No, I can't do that one. That's in D minor. That's no good, is it? Can't Stop. I want to learn how to improvise a guitar solo in Can't Stop. Can't Stop's in the key of E minor. So, what would your E minor... Always start with your minor pentatonic, because I can guarantee you, 100% of the time, that's where most guitarists will start with their guitar solos. If not, it will be the major pentatonic, but most of the time it's a minor pentatonic. So, trying to learn improvise a solo to Can't Stop. Go, right, well, where's E on my guitar? Where's the low E note? And you can say it's, it's open string, or it starts at the 12th fret. So you can now run that shape, and then you kind of you've got all those kind of notes to kind of play through for a kind of a Can't Stop solo. I ain't got a backing to it. It's kind of weird, but it's kind of like, if I try and give it context. Hopefully, it's quite hard about context, I know, but you can see that's just using E minor pentatonic, and that's just on the spot using those notes that I know will work with bends into the major. And again, I really hope this makes sense. It is kind of stuff to make you go, what? My brain, my poor brain. And it will be that way for a while until it really kind of sinks in. But it's very easy once you kind of understand that the shapes I've taught you are all you'll ever need to know. They're all you'll ever need to know to improvise, rock, blues, punk, reggae, whatever guitar solos, they're all you'll ever need to know. Trust me on that one. So, that's how you kind of move them about, really. It is literally as simple as that. You won't need... you won't need to learn any other shapes, unless you kind of want to go into realms of jazz and stuff like that. But we're not. This is about John Frusciante, so we're not going into the realms of harmonic, whole tone, harmonic minor, all this kind of thing. Although John, did use harmonic minor a smidgen towards the end of the Stadium Arcadium tour. Sorry, but not a great deal. He's pretty much pentatonic, tried and true. It creates more melodic. It creates for more melodic playing, so to say. If you're playing with those shapes in D minor, you can kind of. You can kind of hear those. Really, you can be a lot more melodic with it when you can with using too much theory, so to say. Too much theory, I think, can make you think more and make you feel less, if that makes sense. So that's how you move those things. I really, really hope that makes sense. And if it doesn't, let me know in the comment section below, and I will, I'll reply to you in a comment down there and just try and explain it a little bit if I can, a little bit more if I can. But it is that simple. It is, you don't have to learn any of the shapes. You just literally find the key of the song and you just move it. If your song's in C minor, you use your C minor pentatonic, your 5th position. If your song's in G major, you can use G major, or you can figure out your relative minor, which will be E minor. You just count down 3 frets, 1, 2, 3, and you get your low E. So it's in E minor, so you can then solo in E minor and G major, and then your other positions, just figure it out. And basically what you need to do is there's no quick and easy way of doing this. You just need to go away and create a map in your head of the guitar in different keys. Kind of, if you think of it like a filing cabinet, where each drawer is a different key, and in each drawer, at a moment's notice, you can open it and then look at these positions, and you go, right, well, this song's in such and such key, I need this drawer with these shapes, and you can just go to it. As a bit of a strange kind of way of explaining it, but hopefully it makes sense. So just take your time, learn the notes on the top low E string so you know, so you can figure out what key a song is and you know where your scales start. Which again is just key, and I can't believe I missed out in the first and second lessons. Doy! Silly Dave. But yeah, that's really key. To kind of like, learn those notes so you know where your scales start on the low E string. The rest of the strings, not so important. If you want to learn them, go ahead. I don't personally know the A, D, G and B strings. I just don't. I know the shapes, I know what notes work, but I don't know the notes. If you asked me what that note was, I would have to figure it out. It's D. But you see, it takes me time. But at a moment's notice, if you said soloing C sharp minor, I can do it, and that's what you want to do. Like I say, it's creating that map of different keys in your head. So at a moment's notice, somebody says this song's in this key, you can go, right, okay, so it's in a major, so I need to play, I can play in that major or I can play in that minor. And that's all you never need to know. That's, and those shapes will never change. Like I said, I can't stress that enough. There is no different shapes. All those shapes I'll tell you as the end. That is it. That's all you get. The guitar, the rest comes from you. That's where the guitar is limited. The rest comes from you. You have to learn to feel and emote what you want those scales to say. If you want to be sad about it, you have to find a way to make those scales sound sad. You have to, if you're happy, they have to sound happy. You have to find the way to emote what you want to play through the instrument then. Because the guitar will not do it for you, it comes from you. This is just a piece of wood with wires and electrics. So, anyway, enough about that. Let's move on to the next item of today. So hopefully that made sense about moving the shapes into different keys. Take your time, spend a lot of time doing it, just moving in different keys, create a map, and go from there. So, move on. Okie dokie, so moving on to the next part I want to talk about, which is the Californication intro jam. And this is a great example of those 5 positions how John uses them. The jam for Californication from Slane Castle comes out of A minor. So, on which fret is A? Where does the A minor pentatonic start? So like I say, like at the beginning of the video, get to your A note, which is our 5th fret on the low E, and then your A minor pentatonic shape from there. And then then figure out your C major, then position 2, then figure out position 3, and then figure out position 4, and then you're back down here to position 5, your minor pentatonic again. And it's a great example of how John moves through these scales seamlessly, so to say. Because once you learn them, and you can kind of like get out, like I said, I keep saying it, but once you can kind of like become unconscious to them, you're just playing, and you're just kind of emoting through them. You can kind of, it starts to flow. So, for instance, the intro to Slane Castle Californication Jam starts in the first position of C major. It's C major. It starts in the first position, major pentatonic, C major. So it starts between the starts on the 10th fret on the B, and then goes to the 8th fret B, and then goes back to the 10th fret B, and then it does that again. And then it goes to the 9th fret on the G, and then it goes down to the 8th on the B. And I'm not going to teach the whole thing, I'm using this as an example because it's a really cool thing of how John jumps between the positions. And he mainly uses position 1, 2 and 5. So it's major, the C major position, position 2 and the minor position 5, A minor. So, all positions, you start, your first position will start on the 8th fret, and then your second position will start on the 10th fret to the 12th fret, and then your obviously fifth position, will start on your 5th fret on the low E. And I would stay away from the, the chromatics if you're kind of in, if you're jamming more melodically like John. They work better with more kind of funk stuff than anything else. So, I don't know if I've already said that. Either way, I've said it again. So, that's your main positions you need to know for the intro to Californication jam. So I've got hair going into my ear. Oh, it itches. Oh, it's horrible. So yeah. So you start off with your major pentatonic, which starts here, and you can see when you play these notes and you run that scale, you can see those 3 notes. You can see them clearly where they lie in that shape. And then John shifts, move to the 5th position, the A minor, on the D string between the 7th and the 5th. You know, and now he's in that position. So the whole thing's, you know, position 1, position 1, position 5, and he bends up into a major position there, and then he slides back into position 1, position 3, now that's just position 3, and you can see those notes, that shape. That shape, you'll see they are literally, you know, I don't want to do close-ups in this video, as you know, like I said, I've already shown you the shapes. I wanted to be able to kind of like, you can hopefully see what I'm doing, but at the same time you can see move, so to say. But so I'm going to explain this a bit better. But so that's position 3, and then he just goes down back to position 5, A minor again. So basically you're just moving between them, and there's a really cool bit where he just drones the high E, which is basically all you're doing is, and you're just hitting the 12th, 10th, 8th, 7th and 5th. And then you're going into position 3. And then position 4. And I don't think John could go any higher because he's playing his Gretsch, and I think it's quite a struggle to get all there on the White Falcon. So I want to use this example because it is a great example of how moving between positions kind of like, you know, can become seamless, and basically they eventually don't, you know, you don't have position 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. You just have the guitar neck and the notes you know will work, and once you know the notes that will work, you no longer see it as a kind of scale thing, more of a, you know, where you need to go, and if you want to do a high thing, you know where to go for the high thing. You want to do a low thing, you know where to go for a low thing. It's that point where I think it becomes less theory based and more feel based, which is, you know, is a key part of John's playing. Is so feel based, you know, and it really is. You've really got to plumb the depths of your soul, so to say, to play like John, because he did every time. So you know, that's a good little solo to study. It's not very long. It's very simple. There isn't anything hard about it. This isn't, you know, this isn't Steve Vai shredding, you know, sweep picking 101. Simplicity is, you know, is the kind of key, so to say, really. You know, I really hope it's kind of like, you know, this is making sense. Like I say, there isn't a great deal more to teach. You know, it's kind of really a lot more down to you now, really. I've kind of, you know, giving you the kind of like, you know, like I said, and I think I said it in the last video, it's like the alphabet. It's kind of, I've taught you the alphabet. It's kind of now for you to kind of start to kind of learn how to put the words together. Excuse me, out of what I've kind of shown you. So again, just to kind of like recap like where we are so far, you know your shapes in D minor or F major pentatonic. You know your position 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So now go away and learn the notes on your low E string. You know, so you know the low E string, F, F sharp, G, G sharp. You know, so you know them, and you can, you know, so now you know if somebody says, you know, this song's in C minor, you know where a C is, so you can go, right, well, C minor, I can just start in C minor pentatonic, and I can figure out the rest on the fly, so to say. And then once you know that, start to, as like I say, build a map in your head of all the shapes coming out of different keys, so to say. So the guitar becomes less of a an alien, or where am I? Kind of, I'm totally lost, I don't know this key, you know, and it's more a case of like, you know, oh yeah, I know that, you know, because once you do learn those shapes, you know the guitar, you know, it just takes time for it to sink in. It's bizarre, it's so strange. But anyway, yeah, and the Sandcastle intro is a great, simple, nice little kind of ditty to kind of figure out, learn to kind of like, you know, figure out things out for your ears as well, because the more you figure out from ear, the more you'll be able to hear what you want to play and translate it on guitar. If you can kind of hear like, you know, da-da-da, you know, then you can go and play it. Instead of kind of like going, I want to play that, but what is it? You know, using your ears and knowing the neck and where it sounds right will help with that. So that's that. John's pick attack. Now this is important. John lays into the guitar. He does not tap it. He does every now and again, but not a great deal of the time. That's where all this comes from on John's Strat. You know, if you see pictures of John when he first got his 62, none of this is there. Absolutely none of that wear is there. And yet you watch like his second gig back, or even the Ben Freedom concert, he's already going through that finish. He digs, absolutely digs into the guitar. Hit the guitar. You know, unless you're playing under the bridge, where a softer touch is needed. But when you get to that chord, you've really got to hit it. And it's more apparent in his acoustic playing. If you watch, for instance, like the Live at Amsterdam gig, the acoustic gig that John does, and you see how hard he hits that guitar, you know, you get a real great understanding of how he plays. And John uses 60mm plectrums, which is what I've got here. And there's a lot of give in a 60mm plectrum. There's a lot of give. But, yeah, you really dig into the strings, and especially, like, you know, and sometimes you will hear him kind of like a clumsy note, I would call it. Kind of like, you know, where he doesn't quite, you know, kind of make it. It's kind of like it doesn't quite. The first note I think of he doesn't quite make that on there, but that's fine. It's all about expression. Mistakes happen, that's the way it is. But you really got to dig in. You know, you can really. And John, he just digs in. He's really very heavy-handed right hand, and when you have distortion on, you can really hear that plectrum scratch. You know, let me put my DS2 on. Hopefully, be able to hear it. You know, you can hear it tons of the Sandcastle intro. He's really digging in. There's a lot of plectrum scratch there, like that kind of sound, and it is a very big part of John's sound. That plectrum thing. There's also that backstage footage of him teaching you how to kind of play, and he's doing something like this. Doing stuff like that, and that is really, you can see in his face he means everything he plays, and that is important. Don't, you know, if you don't mean it, don't play it. But so pick attack is so important, and you can do it a couple of different ways. There's times where John would float his hand, and there's other times he'd anchor it with his little finger, like for instance, like playing Snow. I think he anchors his little finger. And again, Snow's the one where you dig in. You absolutely dig into the guitar. Do not, for 1 minute, shy away from hitting the guitar. If you hit, you know, if you hit open strings, that's fine. You know, extra noise, it all adds to it. Just don't, you know, don't kind of like let it ring out too much. You know, that's where that, you know, left hand dampening comes in. You know, and if I turn my guitar off, hopefully you'll be able to hear this. You can hear the plectrum really hitting. you know, it becomes an extra noise. And you can hear that real kind of like pingy sound. And I say, before I did relic my guitar to be like John's, I had this kind of like, all these plectrum scratches are from me, you know, and you know, they are, it really just laying into the guitar. It's so important to just lay into the guitar, you know, really hit it. As Rory Gallagher would say, don't mess around with it, hit it. But yeah, it is so important. John's pick attack is aggressive, apart from when it doesn't need to be, but most of the time it's really... And I say, you can hear it more in his acoustic playing. If you want to kind of get an idea of how hard John hits, go and watch that gig at hopefully it's still on YouTube. Losing my voice. About the Amsterdam gig. He's absolutely battering into his Martin acoustic. He absolutely hammers it. And I will get onto John's acoustic guitar playing in more videos. I have so many of these videos. This will probably take, you know, years to do. So people are saying, like, you know, when are you going to get to a bedroom lick? When are you going to get to this? When are you going to get that? I will get to it. There's just so much John stuff I want to teach you. And, you know, I will get to it, I promise, at some point. So, that's pick attack. That's, hopefully I've explained, I'm losing my voice. Hopefully that's kind of explained how to move those shapes into different positions. It is simple, but it doesn't seem to be simple. That's the kind of key to music theory, is it's simple once your brain goes, ah, but up to that point it's very, very kind of like, what? So, you know, just take your time, build those maps in your head, the way you kind of like, you know, you can understand the guitar, and, you know, just start to kind of like go along, you know, the neck, and then, you know, start to kind of learn John's solos, really. Just kind of like, you know, stuff like, you know, stuff like the Zephyr song is, they're so simple, but there's so much in them, and there's so much, you know, like a pick attack, and figure out the shapes and why, you know, what position is he using to get that sound. Then all of a sudden, when somebody asks you to do kind of a John Frusciante solo, you know, you can kind of like get to that kind of sound, so to say. Anyway, is there anything else I need to talk about? I can't think if there's anything else I need to talk about. Like I say, you know, it's I can only take you the thing with guitar teaching is I can only take you a certain way. It's up to you to kind of like go the rest your own, so to say. But I really hope this video has been informative. Like I do all my videos, I really hope you can kind of take something away from this, like, you know, learning to, translate those, and again, those shapes into different keys. And I say learning that, you know, the low E string is paramount to figuring out how to solo and figuring out songs, you know, just so you know your root note of the song. You know, it's always the first chord of the song most of the time. So if you're figuring out Wet Sand and your first chord's G, you know what keys can you solo if you don't solo over G in Wet Sand, but you know, if you did have to, what were the keys you want, you know to what's the key and what's the shapes you can soloing over that chord. So hopefully that makes sense. Like I say, go away and practice pick attack as well. Get your hand anchored in a way that's comfortable for you. Not watching John is good and how he does it, but you need to find your own way, because John will do it differently and you might find it difficult. Like, I can't play Snow like John, where he anchors his little finger. It just feels weird. I have to kind of float my hand, and John does that every now and again, but most of the time you'll see him anchor his little finger. He's got a ring on his finger, it looks so cool. But anyway, I'm getting crazy now. But and again, just practice that picking thing. I mean, just try something like between the third and the fifth. You know, and it really is a big part of John's sound, that pick attack. It's a big pick attack. Quickly want to touch on vibrato. John's got a lovely vibrato. It's a singing vibrato, but he doesn't use it all the time. It's kind of some of his notes like are very straight. you know, there's not a lot of vibrato in there. It's used very sparingly. A lot of John's kind of notes are vibrato free, but every now and again you will hear them, like the refrain from putting vibrato on bends as well. Don't put, you know, don't vibrato bends. You don't need to do that. John would mainly keep his bends pretty straight, and it just creates more for a more, again, it's just a more kind of, like, I don't know, dramatic's the right word, but you know, you kind of hear the straighter you keep it, the more John it sounds. It's bizarre. If you kind of start going into realms of vibrato, you know, you kind of get into Zakk Wylde territory, so to say. So that's another thing. I've got another one of these theory lessons to do. I want to recap everything I've kind of taught, really, and then I want to talk about improvisation a little bit more. It's you need to know those shapes in as many positions as you can, in as many keys as you can. Sorry. To understand the kind of improvisation before I get into that. So I highly doubt I'll get to, unfortunately, one of these lessons next week, you know, with Christmas and everything, so I do apologise for that. But I will get, you know, I'll hopefully, you know, get to them as quick as I can. If not, you know, I'll try and get one in before the new year, fingers crossed, if I don't get too busy doing family stuff. But I will really try for you to get lesson 4 of the theory in, and so in the new year we can start learning songs, we can start learning bedroom lick, we can start learning scar tissue and Californication. And yes, somebody asked a question, I will be going into every era of John, tone wise and playing wise, from Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic, Mother's Milk, by the way, Californication, Stadium Arcadium, and his solo stuff as well. So, you know, you've got, you know, all sorts to look forward to, and I cannot wait to get on with it. I love this. I love this series. I am so. This is one of my most fun things to do on YouTube. I love doing this John Frusciante series. You know, and it's great to pay homage to a man who's given me so much and who I've never met. And if I did meet, I'd probably die. But it would be the coolest moment of my life. But anyway, I hope this video has been informative. I hope it's made sense. I think it's a fairly long one, so you know, just take your time going through it. And yeah, hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you again for another video very soon. I won't say Merry Christmas because I'm going to do another video before this. So, thank you very much and goodbye now. Why do all guitarists on YouTube salute? Bizarre! Anyway.